They are an unlikely breed of therapist. Dolphins who swim freely yet seek out the company of humans, especially humans in need. No one knows why a unique bond exists between people and these aquatic mammals, but it's there, and its effect is measurable.
I think the reason that dolphins are interested in human beings is because they're very intelligent, and there's a real sensitivity that they seem to have.
Dr. David Nathanson is a psychologist who has found that dolphin-assisted therapy is a powerful tool for teaching neurologically impaired children.
About 15 years ago, I was very interested in taking a look at doing some research with animals and children, because I've worked with disabled kids for about 30 years. And there are three things that they seem to be most interested in: animals, music, and water. Animal-assisted therapy, generally, if it's done properly by experienced people with gentle animals, is very effective. But dolphins are especially helpful because the additional dimension of being in warm water and the fact that the dolphins are so intelligent and sensitive makes it almost kind of the optimum environment for healing.
Kathy Anderson already had two children, Mia and Andrea, when her son, Dean Paul, was born.
When Dean Paul was first born, the feelings were very mixed. I knew immediately as soon as I held him that he had Down syndrome. It was kind of a scary feeling, but then I also knew that somehow, some way, everything was really going to be all right.
He wasn't like a normal baby. He cried, but he didn't, that's about it. He didn't make any noise, just kind of laid there. He was more like a doll than anything else.
Down syndrome is a congenital disorder in which there is an extra chromosome present in each cell of the body. The condition causes toxins to build up between the brain and the skull. As a result, the brain cannot grow to full size.
Most kids with Down syndrome are in the moderate range of mental retardation. Some are in the mild range, some are in the severe range.
When Dean Paul was first born, the doctors said that he would be a vegetable, and that was the word they used. He would not have thought processes. If we were lucky, he would eventually walk and be able to dress himself and maybe be able to feed himself.
Kathy refused to accept the dismal prognosis offered by Dean Paul's doctors. The whole family worked tirelessly to try and motivate Dean Paul's progress using traditional therapy techniques. But even after 2.5 years, it seemed that it would take nothing short of a miracle to elicit even one word from the struggling toddler. Then Kathy Anderson found her miracle, gracefully swimming circles in the dolphin tank at the local zoo.
Our first visit to the Oklahoma City Zoo was when Dean Paul was 2.5 years old. We went to the zoo because they had just opened their Aquatica show, and since I love dolphins, I was going to go see it, and he was going with us. We got into the dolphin show, and he sat up straight, his eyes flew open, and his mouth just gaped, and he didn't take his eyes off the dolphins. I was amazed. He had never paid that much attention to anything and for that long a period of time.
He went up after the show when they were feeding the dolphins, and there was a lot of other little kids there, but he just stood and just stared at the dolphins, and they came right to him. They didn't get us their food, or they wanted to play with Dean Paul, and they were talking to him and splashing him, and I remember the smile I got on his face.
It was a breakthrough moment that would eventually lead Kathy and Dean Paul to Dr. Nathanson and his dolphin project in Miami, Florida.
Dr. Nathanson told me at the time that we talked on the phone that he was seeing sometimes as much as 10 times the learning abilities and speed with the children that he worked with. And he was seeing great strides with kids with Down syndrome in their communications and speech development, which of course Dean Paul was really behind in.
With just a glimmer of hope that Dean Paul might benefit from dolphin therapy the way other children with Down syndrome had, the Andersons left for Florida.
There were two problems with Dean Paul. One was that he was pretty withdrawn. And the second is that his language was severely delayed. In Dean Paul's case, he loved the water, and he loved working with the dolphins. I wouldn't let Dean Paul interact the way he wanted to unless he tried much harder. So he was highly motivated, he paid attention beautifully, and as a result, his language started to improve, his confidence started to improve, and he got to go in the water a lot more. And this was very important to him.
The first time Dean Paul had therapy, the dolphins just went crazy. They just were jumping and screeching and yelling at him. It was like he had come home. He was in heaven now.
What was it about Dean Paul that drew the dolphins to him and allowed him to utter his very first sounds?
Within less than 20 minutes, he was working with the dolphins and just having a great time at it. He became immediately more verbal. Just vocalizations of any sound were welcome. I knew he had the capability of sound. Now he was using it, and he was using it for communication.
In the months that followed, Dean Paul literally came alive. The dolphins were succeeding where science had largely failed. The little boy who couldn't talk or run or swim disappeared, and the real Dean Paul was emerging.
Showed him picture boards, and then he was to make an attempt to identify the picture. If he identified it correctly, then he could give a signal to the dolphins or have a swim. He progressed so rapidly that soon he was in the water doing his picture boards from the water, and he would do 5 to 10 of them before he had to have his reward.
In general, I think animals can sometimes reach people when people can't reach them. And that kind of unconditional love and interest in the child is a remark. You know, don't forget, if you're a child with a disability, let's say Down syndrome, and you're walking in the supermarket, some people are friendly, some people are not friendly, just on the basis of how you look. That doesn't matter to the dolphins.
But the bond between Dean Paul and the dolphins transcended unconditional love. It went even deeper than that, especially with one dolphin named Bee.
The experience that Dean Paul had with Bee was incredible to me. They bonded immediately. It got to the point that he couldn't even do therapy with her because she would just take him away and take him out to the middle of the pool and just stay there.
Dean Paul's relationship with Bee was almost maternal. They bonded and they just connected. They were like soulmates.
Bee then became very ill after we'd moved to Miami. And she would only come up to the front of the pool when Dean Paul was there. Then one day she didn't come up to the front of the pool.
2 nights later, Kathy was awakened in the middle of the night.
Dean Paul had been sound asleep. He sat straight up in bed and said, "Oh, my Bee," and climbed out of his bed and raced to the front door calling for Bee. Just, "Oh, Bee, Bee." After I took him to school the next morning, I got a phone call that Bee had died in the night. And knew then that she had died at that time.
While children like Dean Paul are considered disabled, they also seem to have a singular ability to understand and communicate with these silent, gentle sea creatures. Dean Paul attended dolphin-assisted therapy weekly for 3 years, and as a result, he now has near normal skills in cognitive and neuromotor areas.
I feel that Dean Paul has progressed past the normal mold that we've put kids with Down syndrome in. If you see him out on the playground, you can't tell Dean Paul from any of the other kids.
But a natural disaster brought Dean Paul's therapy to an abrupt end when Hurricane Andrew forced the Andersons to move back to Enid, Oklahoma.
Dean Paul hasn't been with dolphins for almost 2 years now, and he cries for them often.
The realities of life have severed the loving bond that Dean Paul once shared with his dolphin therapists. The dolphin's unique role in his learning experience has no human counterpart and simply can't be replaced.